Hey, Brassvax here. Today we're going to talk about how SPRs don't fit on this table and we should make a return back to PCCs because they fit better in camera footage. Just kidding. We're going to be talking about SPRs and why you would want one, and also, by extension, why you may not want one. Now, yes, this is America, and we don't need no damn reason to want something beyond, well, just wanting it. I get it. I'm a full-blown consumerist as well. But for some people, if money is tight and they want to maximize their cash spent on effective stuff, we need to have a discussion. Why would a civilian want a SPR? I'm going to do a lot of comparison of a SPR, a special purpose rifle, special purpose receiver, whatever, to a general purpose rifle, right? Typically a gun that has an LPVO on it, a light, maybe a laser, and it's basically set up for general usage, right? I'll also touch on potential mission sets where you might find yourself wanting to use an SPR. And I also touch on that in this video up here. And that one really gets into the weeds and into the details. You may want to watch that if you want to contextualize why a civilian will or might want to engage past, 50 yards. Also, let's get this out of the way because this is important to talk about. If you don't believe in the full or partial collapse of society as a possibility, so anything from Katrina round 7 to the end of times and everything in between, this video may not be for you. This is going to get into the weeds and maybe a bit tinfoily. But hey, this is our fucked up community, so if you're still sticking around, let's get into it. We have to start with first, what the fuck is an SPR, right? It refers to a specific military configuration. But like the term Recce currently terrorizing gun tubers and Instagram alike, the meaning is about as ambiguous and varied as there are people using it. So this is my definition and how I view it. This is not really a true definition. All you really need to know is roughly what we're discussing here, right? The terms don't nearly matter as much, but I can't put a paragraph in the title. Originally, SPRs were a very specific military configuration. I mentioned this in previous videos, but SPR started out as a very specific military configuration, the Special Purpose Receiver, the Mark 12. But the civilian industry has co-opted the term, and now it's a generalist term that describes a sniper system that has enough features to function as a sniper, but also has the compromises required such that that rifle can function as a sort of SDM infantry-esque weapon, still able to clear houses, have a light potentially, fight in a gunfight, etc. Most of that compromise is handled by using 5.56 instead of something like 308. Well, in practice, what does this actually mean? What components make an SPR an SPR? What do the subcomponents bring to the table? And why do we want these features? Numero uno. A scope. No fucking shit. We want a scope, and a dedicated scope for the task of shooting as far as possible. This generally means all LPVOs are disqualified, and we want something like a rifle scope. In this case, we have a 2.5 to 10x primary arms. This conveys us a number of useful features. Dialable turrets, which allow us to, dial onto target. A crosshair that would generally be considered too busy for an LPVO, right? LPVOs want a good 1x first and foremost. Here we don't care about that as much, so a good crosshair that functions at long ranges, right? Christmas tree reticles come to mind and the ability for rapid follow-up shots. Parallax adjustment is critically important, right? Semi-blurry targets might be fine at 300 yards, but if you're shooting long range, which is the whole purpose of this setup, being able to see your target is generally agreed upon to be a useful thing. So that's what a parallax is, right? It allows you to adjust the focus, which is not what the diopter is, contrary to popular belief. You also almost universally get a far bigger objective lens, right? LPVOs need a small objective lens to facilitate the 1x, the flat 1x image. We don't care about 1x here, so we have a bigger objective lens. This obviously gives us a lot of light gathering that you won't see in an LPVO, but it also is very important in terms of eye box. If you've ever used a 1 to 8x or even a 1 to 10x, you'll notice the eye box is quite tight on those. And that is a function of the objective lens. Objective lens is a critical component of what makes your exit pupil. So, bigger objective lens, bigger exit pupil, less tight eye box. Got it? Good. So, on paper, a lot of people think something like a Razor 1 to 10x or a 1 to 8x of whatever flavor is very comparable to a 2.5 to 10x like this guy over here. The lack of features ends up making this purpose-driven optic superior when it comes to the task of observation and long-range shooting versus the Razor, which is like bordering on $3,000, by simply being designed for the task. The Razor is a general-purpose scope. It does that niche incredibly well, but that's not the niche we're going for. Okay, the scope is a big part of the picture, probably the biggest part of the picture, but putting a scope like this onto your 16-inch rifle isn't the full picture, so what else is there? Well, barrel length. I don't even think this fits into the camera, yeah. Barrel length. This is kind of a given, but it's a multifaceted factor. When you're committing to building out a rifle like this, you're going to focus a lot on the barrel. You need to shoot far, so you're going to need velocity, not just for making those longer shots easier, but actually having enough ass behind your bullet so when you get there, it is more effectively lethal. 5.56 kind of sucks. So we want all the velocity we can get, so you might as well put on a longer barrel. Obviously, the barrel itself, where it comes from, how it's built, is important. While a 2 MOA gun is fine, we're going to want to start pushing that with some precision ammo. And in that case, a lot of times that means sacrificing the durability of a chrome-lined barrel. Not always, but sometimes, to gain even more accuracy to really increase that hit probability. Because that's what it's ultimately about, getting the bullet there and increasing and doing it so with a high hit probability. Thicker barrels, you may decide, hey, I want a bull barrel. This keeps my barrel cooler for longer, which means your accuracy doesn't degrade as fast. It also helps with barrel whip, being of a stiffer design, so you have more accuracy as per usual. Once again, all of this is just a function of accuracy, and accuracy is just consistency in getting your bullet on target. The end goal is acceptable accuracy. How you get there is up to you, right? You don't need all of those things I just mentioned. Running a stabilization system like a bipod is critically important. Because there is an expectation of long-range shooting, otherwise why have a setup like this, the ability to functionally or effectively stabilize the weapon system in an expedient manner is incredibly important. So while a bipod or a tripod doesn't aid in your mechanical accuracy, right, the rifle hasn't changed in accuracy, your practical accuracy goes up massively, right? With the ability to load a bipod, you can create a very rapid, impromptu, stabilized shooting position. It's very much like a trigger, right? A trigger doesn't make a gun more accurate, but it makes it a hell of a lot easier to shoot the gun to its accuracy potential. Same thing with a bipod, even more so with a tripod, though tripods do have a massive weight penalty because you got to carry it with you. Ammo is another very important aspect, though variable depending on your range. For example, FMJ can easily get out to about 800 yards semi-consistently. That being said, most precision ammo is of a higher weight grain, so it carries more lethality than of the 55 or 62 grain flavors. It is generally match, so your accuracy might go from 2 MOA with basic ball ammo to something like 1.75 maybe MOA with precision ammo on a decent or maybe even a good barrel. A lot of days this really won't matter, but you combine the weight savings and the tighter grouping, it just makes life easier. So it really depends on your range if you need precision ammo or not, right? Other factors obviously include having a long rail system such that you can stabilize your rifle easily, a nice trigger for obvious reasons. You might even want a more custom stock with a stabilizer, a monopod on the back to further go into this category. Those are all very subjective, and it depends how far you want to push the SPR towards the sniper system and away from being a lightweight package to function as, a fighting rifle, right? Because it's a balancing act. This one specifically, I have a very nice Rainier Arms barrel, but it is a lightweight reduced profile barrel, not penciled, but reduced profile, not a bull barrel. It's still chrome lined, so I retain a degree of durability and longevity throughout its usage and its intended use case. I have a scope with a lower 2-power end, so I can still kind of fight with it, and I also have the red dot as a other system. I have a basic carbine stock setup because I really don't feel like I need a more sophisticated stock. Nice trigger. Yeah, that's really about it. But the point is, all of this comes together to give you something that I would call a system, right? A sniper system or a weapon system. It's the sum of the parts all coming together to make something greater than the parts, right? You can put a rifle scope on your GPR, as I mentioned, but that doesn't make it a sniper system, right? It needs these factors working in conjunction to really kind of get it there. So with the scope, ammo choices, bipods, barrels, all working together, what exactly do you get? Well, all you really end up getting is increased hit probability and a slight increase to lethality. With the main concession of caliber choices keeping this in line, it is not that much different than a general purpose rifle. What do I mean by this? Mechanically, the range difference between what the system is capable of between an 11.5 weapon, a 13.9 weapon, 16 inches, whatever, versus a 18 or 20 inch SPR is functionally not that much. Now, obviously there are differences, but both systems get bullets really far, and because it's 5.56, they generally get there with not much oomph. I've done several videos where I run a 4x scope, actually on this rifle specifically, out to 700 yards or so. I've even shot an 11.5 out to 600 yards with first round hits, with wind, no problem, it can be done. But what the SPR gives you is that first round hit confidence at these ranges and further. And sometimes that is incredibly desired, and it's worth the downsides you'll be paying, primarily in weight and cost, to get here. Sometimes it's really important to have first round hits and the features offered here. I have that other video I mentioned earlier, that urban recce video. I really get into the weeds and I discuss a mission set where you may want to use a rifle like this. And I get into a lot of detail. But here are a couple examples, or whatever you want to call it, where you might want to use an SPR. Because you have better spotting, or real spotting, ranging capabilities, shot calling capabilities, and shooting capabilities that are elevated over standard rifles, this allows you certain missions that are more difficult for a generalist package. So for example, if you're in a mountainous terrain, it is very quick, you very quickly reach the point where you overstress the capabilities of 5.56, you get a little bit of wind and the round eats shits and dies. And you're going to find yourself wanting, both in range and wind bucking capabilities. And that's where something like this really proves itself beyond a standard, mil-spec-esque setup with a free float rail. Bringing it back a bit, even rural or forested areas, this rifle can once again potentially shine. Because this is America, there are openings, there are roads, there are highways, there are choke points, so on and so forth. So even if you're in a large secluded group or even a small village town, there will be some expectations of perimeter security, or even the desire to hold like a highway pass or just a pass in general. And in this aspect, once again, the SPR really shines. The ability to get to a location or fight from it or to it, but also the ability to observe, set up easily, and fire at potentially known distances or unknown distances really allows it to shine in that checkpoint, observational, choke point, whatever you want to call it, as described. Even bringing it even closer in a city, the notion, I find, that the max engagement range of a city is like 50 yards and in, I think really fades when you kind of take a look around. City blocks are easily 100 yards long. 2 city blocks, we're pushing 200 plus yards. If you go look at almost any building that isn't directly in front of you, those things are pushing 300 plus yards away from you, depending on your sight lines. And we look at situations like historically Syria, Bosnia, the Balkans, and now the Ukraine, rest in peace. The preponderance people setting up in high vantage points and being utterly devastating and dominating with stuff like a hunting rifle, where they decide their new method of survival is blasting anyone that comes in their kill zone. Right? The effectiveness of a sniper in a city is well understood outside of civilized society. Dealing with a person held up like that decided to make your neighborhood their kill zone requires a system that competes with theirs. But unlike him, you only get one shot until he decides to relocate. And once again, another case for the SPR. You may also find yourself observing an area to get the feel for the movement, the disposition of people, general trends, so on and so forth, when society has partially collapsed or fully collapsed. And the ability to have a weapon that lets you get to your hide, and potentially even fight when you get there, but also function as your sniper/observation system once you get to said hide, is quite valuable. Most people are not functioning in large enough groups where having a dedicated sniper person is viable, so something like this, which kind of blends that dichotomy, is useful. There are countless more situations, Overwatch, whatever you want to call it, where something like this may warrant its usage. But these were just a couple I mentioned. Some delicious high fructose corn syrup. And in short, you can kind of see from what I've talked about that the SPR really shines in specific mission sets or scenarios that call for its feature set. But that also is its biggest downside. In my opinion, a basic setup like an SPR with magnification or a GPR with magnification, like an LPVO, do-it-all setups that are lightweight, function a lot better when you don't have the ability for planning, foresight, mission sets, whatever, and you're basically just ad-libbing, which is what you're going to be doing most of the time. The flip side of that, from a logistical standpoint, having one well-equipped rifle beats the snot out of having 4 rifles you barely get any training time on. And this is absolutely not a good first rifle. Anyway, we've been going for quite a bit, so hopefully this kind of helped you out when deciding if this makes sense to you. Understand your experience, game plan, whatever you want to call it, will tilt the value of the variables that I use to make my conclusion. Thus, you can end up with a completely different conclusion, and it would be just as valid or more valid. This was just a case for an SPR, or not a case for an SPR. A concept I think is being often written off recently, but I think still has a place. Anyway, that's been some brass facts for you. We're going to have some reviews coming up here real soon, so consider subscribing if that interests you, or if you're already, sticking around. Thanks for watching. There'll be more programming shortly.
Hi. Hi. You miss me? You miss me?